I work with the divine feminine. I work with the energy of the goddess, the collective healing that needs to happen as feminine. And that's really been something that just became clearer and clearer to me in my journey as a photographer.
Your e-girlfriend.
So today we're gonna have a photographer that is visiting Mexico to do some projects, and we're gonna talk in English because that's the language that we can communicate each other. And we're gonna talk about her healing through photography, how she creates a visual narrative of the female sexuality away from the male gaze, and her connection with the divine feminine. So keep an eye on it.
Quiero agradecer a Cerveza Cangrejo por ser nuestro patrocinador oficial durante nuestros episodios.
We have already talked before about your work, and you explained me that you connect with the divine feminine to do healing through photography. Mm-hmm. So I would like you to tell me where are you from, and like a little bit of context of your background and how you started with this.
I'm from Sweden. I live in Costa Rica. I've been in Costa Rica for the past 9 years. I started doing photography in Costa Rica. I started more in the fashion photography realm. And as time passed, I realized that it wasn't so much about selling the products for me or like the clothes that I wanted to capture. I more so witnessed so much of the journey of like when a woman is in front of the camera, like what happens within her. Like so often we contract and we think that I need to look like this or I need to look like that. And I was me having gone through a lot of my own body image stuff and like having such a terrible relationship with my own, like looking myself in the mirror when I was younger. And then when I was older and started to do this work and starting to see that journey of what happened when she was in front of my lens, the woman, and how throughout the photo shoot, I noticed that there was a change as she more so relaxed and came into herself. And that's kind of how it started. And then more and more it started deepening into really like diving into body image awareness, diving into what are your insecurities, what are the things that you contract about, what are the things that we think that we need to be in front of a camera, and where does that come from? A lot of it comes from programming of how we grew up and how we grew up looking at media and that kind of stuff. So that sort of like started taking on a life of its own, honestly, and I started doing more and more embodiment journeys for women to where I was guiding them to be able to relax into the beauty of that I was like, you're already a woman, you're already enough. I don't need you to be anything in front of my camera. I need you to be you, because that's where your true beauty can shine, you know? Mm-hmm. And then that has just grown and really each shoot is different and each woman comes into it working with something different, because some women have a lot of body image issues and some women don't. Like some women are working through other things, that there's shame around sexuality or shame around other things. So It's like whatever you bring to the shoot or whatever's going on is what we'll work through, right?
What is the soul of your work?
The soul of my work is I work with the divine feminine. I work with the energy of the goddess, the collective healing that needs to happen as feminine. And that's really been something that just became clearer and clearer to me in my journey as a photographer. And I ended up having at one point very just clear messaging coming in that to use my art as a tool for the awakening of the divine feminine and for the rising of the divine feminine. And I try to always be in integrity with that. Whenever I feel like, I have clients that are asking things of me that feel like it doesn't resonate with that, I do often actually say no, or I invite them into like, okay, this is how I work, and it has to resonate with that, with whatever resonates with healing and rising of the divine feminine.
How do you transform a normal shooting like in kind of a sort of ceremony photo shoot?
I think energy works with intention, right? And I think it's very important to be very intentional with whatever container or creation that you're creating. I think how you go into it as the creator of the experience is very important. So for me, even before I meet with the client, I always sit down and I pray, and I sit down and I connect and make it into my own ritual of like, okay, I'm going into this container. I'm going to be holding space for whatever it is that comes up. Any sort of emotions or anything that come up, I'm going to be here for it, you know? And so I always sit and I invite in the divine feminine to work through me, and any healing or any messages of goddesses or anything to really come in and invite them into the space. And I do think that those rituals, they matter, you know, and I've seen that as well, you know. Yeah. And then in a sense of like, of more so the physical and working with the person, I always make sure to be very clear in how I work before going into it. I'm like, this is not a session where if you have all these ideas for your brand and we're going to do this and that, and it needs to look this way and that way, I'm like, listen, we're going to work with whatever it is that comes up and whatever it is that's raw and authentic and real in your life right now. So I always have a call beforehand, and I try to talk to you about what is going on in your life and what is alive for you, what is your relationship to your feminine, and from there we can dive in, right? And then within the shoot, throughout that feedback that I've already had, I also so many times feel very surrendered to the process, and I feel like there is an energy and a force that works through me, you know? And a lot of times there's that, the healing that needs to happen sort of happens by itself because the intention is put there and because we've opened up those subjects, and it's very easy to relate and see what it is that's coming through. And then, but I always invite a space to go deeper into it. You know, it's different in every shoot. It's different with whatever that comes up. But to me, it's really, I hold that intention of wanting you to have some sort of transformation or breakthrough from a space of like, you know, you'll have whatever breakthrough that you're ready for. You'll have whatever, this can go as far as you're ready for. For some women, that's just like being in front of a camera. For some women, that's being naked in front of a camera. There could be so many different ways, but I try to really keep the consciousness of being present with what's there. And if I see an emotion coming through you, and if I see there is a contraction or anything, like instead of just being like, okay, whatever, let's keep shooting. Like,
that's what you work with, no?
Yeah, I'm like, okay, here it is. Like, here is the thing that we can dive into, you know, and I try to hold space for that, you know.
So have you ever had like an issue with your models about the results? Like, have you ever encountered like some conflict there?
Very few times, but there's 2 times that stick out. Like last year I had one woman who, we were scheduling her photo shoot and she was PMSing and she didn't want to do it, and she was like, no, let's rebook it. And this is something that's very interesting, right? Because it's like the flow of the feminine of like always, you know, we're water, right? And everything's always changing. So the day of the photo shoot you might not feel like it, and you know, and then or you're on your period, or there's, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm always
like, it's never the moment.
Exactly.
Right?
And so it got to, we had rebooked 3 times, and I'm happy to rebook. You know, I know how it is if we wake up and we don't feel like it, but I did sense a resistance of like, okay, we can keep rescheduling this, or we can capture this and capture this part of you that maybe doesn't want to be seen, because maybe that's the medicine, you know?
You said that this was working like with the dark feminine, right? Because we talked about this before.
Exactly.
And you told me this, you know, that we need also to worship our dark feminine,
exactly.
Right?
And like that part of us that's PMSing or about to bleed or about to, she is also a part of us. And how can we honor her too? And this woman had, you know, this part of her that was a little more insecure, a little more like, you know, just with a lot of stories in her head, especially like before when you're PMSing and like, and she was like, and I was like, so let's capture her, you know, let's capture her, let's make this shit about her, and maybe we can find a way where you can accept her too, you know, because there was clearly a resistance. So we did the photo shoot. It went well. I did sense a little bit of resistance for her in the shoot too, to not being able to completely surrender. But I was like, you know, meeting her where she was at. And after, when she got the photos, she was like, I don't feel like these look like me. I don't like any of these. I don't. And to me, whenever I get that response, I'm like, this is it. This is the work, right? This is an opportunity to love yourself deeper.
Yeah, it's like a different way to see yourself, right?
Yeah, because in the end of the day, if we have this perception of like, when I look myself in the mirror, when I look myself in a selfie camera, or when I take photos of myself and I pose the right way, then I can accept myself. But when you're seeing yourself from another person's lens, maybe from angles you're not used to, or maybe PMSing and you're not trusting, and that all communicates through the camera, right? So of course some of that came through. Of course I could see her resistance even in some of the photos. So when she saw that too, she was like, these don't look like me. I saw all of my friends have such amazing photo shoots with you, but not me. And it was her story too of like, you know, it works out for everyone else, but it doesn't work out for me, you know? So we kind of went back and forth and talked for a long time, for like a week. And then she sort of came out of it, and then she ended up like, it ended up empowering her so much, and she ended up posting all of these photos and being when I got these photos, I hated them, but but it was all my perception, and like eventually she actually came to love them.
How she convinced herself?
I think that what changed, like I talked to her, I held space for a lot of her process, but I think that she also just, sometimes we need to let photos also sink in. And you know, when we first get them, we have our glasses of self-critique on.
I agree. Like, whenever I get pictures of myself, like, I'm always like, I'm gonna let like a week pass after I saw them, and then I will see them again. And I swear I see them differently. Yeah. Like, something happens there.
Exactly. And it's also where you are in your cycle. If you're PMSing, you're gonna think one way about yourself. If you're in another part of your cycle, you're gonna think one way about it, you know? So being sensitive to that, and also like knowing that usually our first view of the photos, we have these self-critique glasses on because we have so much programming of like, this is what I should look like, and we all have formed a perception of ourselves. That's
like, horrible that our first perception when seeing pictures of ourselves is like we don't like them, you know? Because
we often judge from what we've learned, but then when we let it sink in, we let it sink into our body, and not so much in our mind, and kind of digest the experience. We can come back and we're like, wait, this is me. Like, I love me, and I think that that's the part that I try to work with so much, this idea of how we need to look like versus how we look like, and embracing all of us, you know.
Who are these girls that you shoot? Who are these models, and how do they find you, or how do you find them?
So I don't call them models because it's regular women. It's all women from everywhere. I've shot women, old, young, you know, from all different parts of the world. And it's mostly clients that come to me that have found me on Instagram, or I've worked with one of their friends or something like that, or they've somehow found my website and they resonate with my work. I try to be very clear. As much as I can portray what it is that I do, I try to put it out there, and a lot of times I believe in just like the organic unfolding of all. I've never really pushed for my marketing and been like, hey, like, look at me, because I believe that I believe in soul clients. The women who need to work with me, who need the medicine of my work, they will find me. And a lot of women tell me that they find me in just the right moment. I'm just like, I have a very backseat, surrendered experience to it. I'm like, of course, you know, of course you're gonna find me, because I believe in the magic of it all. Whatever needs to come through, I have such deep trust in it. It's like, whatever needs to come through, it's gonna be exactly what you need, you know?
Of course, yes, I do believe the same, that whatever you need, it will come to you, like you manifest.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you explain to a model that it's used to do like a fashion photography to go like in a healing and spiritual way with it?
That happens sometimes, that women come to me and it's like, I want a photographer and I want to do this and this and that. And to me, that's a very masculine approach. It's like, I see her and she's coming from this very fast-paced society that we have. This is how it needs to look like. This is how I need to portray myself. This is to be successful in this world, right? And to me, that's a masculine approach. It's like, here, it needs to look like this, and it's very old paradigm. And I'm like, no. And of course, like, you can choose to have that experience or not, you know? But I explain how I work, and I focus on body image awareness and self-love and natural beauty. I shoot women without makeup in nature normally, and I explain why, and I explain that I think that we have a responsibility as women too to portray ourselves in media in an authentic way, so that we don't feed into that sort of the world that we're trying to leave behind, where women weren't empowered, and where I came from this world of conditioning of like, I need to have a flat stomach, I need to look like this, and to me, when someone is coming from the modeling world, really, I notice that very much, because they have a sense of posing in very specific ways that they've maybe been guided to do in the modeling world. To me, it's all about the embodied guidance, and it's like, I'm going to guide you into how to release, how to shed that. I very much prepare, like I have conversations beforehand, and some women it's going to resonate with. Some women are going to be like, wait, actually, this is exactly what I need.
Of course.
And some women are going to be like, no, right now I actually need photos that look exactly like this for my brand and for my whatever. And I always say, like, we can take photos for your brand too, but they might not be specifically catered and like less structure, because the structure for me is like the conversations we have beforehand and the space, the container that we create. But then when we go into the shoot, we have to allow the magic of the feminine to unfold, right? And if we have too many structures, which is more our masculine energy, and you're not allowing for any magic to unfold.
For freedom, right?
You're not allowing for that embodiment and that this is how I work. And
they surrender to it.
Yeah, okay. You can either surrender to it or you're going to contract and feel like this is not for me right now,
Of course. You would say that you work with the unconscious also.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Like I said, like you're going to be ready for it. Wherever you are at in your journey is how deep you're going to be able to go into it.
How is it different for you to take pictures of naked women? Like not be like in this male gaze. Male gaze is the way men portray women, like in a way of, in a sexual way, like to turn themselves on. How do you fight with it so, like your pictures don't turn on other men?
I don't think it's a matter of not turning on men, because men are going to be turned on by feminine energy regardless. But I think that there's a specific kind of way that women in the past, and that we like in the patriarchal way of looking at women, which you're saying is the male gaze.
Yeah. Objectification of the body.
It's first of all the way that I take the pictures. That isn't present. I'm not telling you to stick out your butt and stick out your... I think that way of looking at women, of being like hot, that's a very like male way of looking at women. I'm more so, because I also am a woman, like I more so see your beauty and your essence, and not that men can't see your beauty and your essence, but it comes from a different place. I'm not turned on by your body if your butt and your boobs are sticking out, it's more... I see your beauty as I see nature. I see your beauty as so I think having that lens also changes the way that I capture women, because I'm not capturing it from a male gaze. And then, like I was telling you before as well, it's like when I do feel that energy, when people follow me and I see very clearly that it is the type of man that, or even feel energetically that it's the type of man that comes to my page to just look at naked women. To me, I block them. I don't want that energy in my field, And I also have men who have written me who have been like, wow, the way that you portray women, it makes me awaken to more of the woman, of like the beauty of woman, and the more of like the wholeness of woman. So I think the fact that I'm a woman, like, first of all, like I don't capture women from a male gaze. I think that is a big, thing to my advantage. But then also, like, how I post photos is like, I have a million photos of women that I could be posting every day, but I post it from a very intentional space. I post it if I have something to say. I write a lot of poetry as well. If I have a message that comes through with the photo, to me that's very powerful. To me that's very... it's like maybe that photo of a naked woman will catch your eye, but if you go on to read what's underneath, there's a deeper message there, and that can also connect to maybe planting seeds of consciousness in these men's minds of like, oh, like there's something deeper here, What about if the model wants to show off her boobs or her butt? Like, what do you do when you encounter this? Like,
you play with their sexuality? Like, okay, so she wants to be more sexual in a way on your pictures. So what do you do with that? Or would you tell her like you feel more
No.
soft?
I think that being in your sexuality is beautiful. It depends on where it comes from. If you're embodying that energy for you, if you're awakening that energy from a space of like, you're doing it for you, in the same way when we self-pleasure, in the same way when we're like, you know, when we're feeling like we're connecting, because it's life force energy in the end of the day, when we're connecting to that from a space of ourselves and feeling like we're allowing that, amazing. If I sense that it's coming from a place of like, okay, I'm looking at the camera and now I gotta put my boobs out and now I gotta put my butt out so that I can be sexy, that's a different space than you having your own process and feeling beautiful and sexy, you know? Okay. It's more so, am I feeling this energy alive within me, or am I doing it for someone looking?
Well, you told me you were working in fashion photography at first. Mm-hmm. So what do you think of beauty standards? Like, how did that change you?
I grew up very much like looking at, you know, Victoria's Secret and supermodels and all of these things, and it very much shaped my way of looking at myself and the way that I actually didn't like myself. It made me critique myself a lot. It made me like fashion magazines and all these things, like it made me be very insecure and have these sort of beauty standards of like, okay, I need to be really skinny, I don't want my thighs to touch, I want to have a flat stomach, all these things that, like, you know, can be very, like, the fashion industry really, it's changing, but when I grew up, it was very much like that. And I started traveling and leaving that sort of the Western world and all of that conditioning that I'd been around, and I started traveling, and I stopped wearing makeup when I was backpacking, you know, there's no time to really, I realized that, like, oh, like, even if I'm not wearing makeup, even if I'm not fixing my hair every morning or whatever, like, I'm having just as much fun. Mm-hmm. Just as many guys are talking to me, just as many friends I'm making. And so that started really changing for me, my own awareness of myself, of like, oh, like, I'm still beautiful. And then I had a period where I completely rejected makeup and completely rejected all of these beauty standards that I had grown up around. And I was like, the opposite, you know.
So you would say you were connecting with yourself.
I started connecting more to myself, and then when I did work in fashion, I had to translate that. I'm not going to shoot women in a way where I'm catering to that I left behind. I need to shoot women in a way where I feel like they're embodied in their feminine, in their not with these beauty standards. And I think that just the way that I would guide the photo shoots, like, would sometimes tell you the opposite, to like lean over and let your belly loose, and how they then saw themselves. It's still a beautiful photo, and started realizing that, like, I think that's how I sort of separated those beauty standards, and also how I don't shoot with makeup and that kind of stuff as well. So I won't work with people who are trying to push me in a certain direction, because I don't do this to please anyone's photographic needs, really. I do this to shift and change something within the feminine and within how we portray the feminine, and that's important to me, you know. Okay. I think there's a difference between sexuality within the male gaze. Like, I think we've been taught, we get into our heads with that, you know. And there's a very much of like okay, to be sexy for men, I should look like this, or I should curl my hair like this, or put makeup on, or da-da-da, versus an embodied sexuality. An embodied sexuality, you're connected to your sexuality always, because that's your life force. It's the simple things like sensuality, touch, like those things. And it's more of a felt energy than a mind energy, you know? So I think
the media has made so use the objectification of woman as a standard.
It's programmed into our heads that that's sexuality. And I think a lot of women have insecurities within sex, where they think that, oh, I need to look like, or my boobs don't look like perfect, or my my belly's hanging out, or they have insecurities within that. But that's still all in their head, versus an embodied sexual experience where you're like taking your power back and you're realizing that my sexuality is mine.
Of course.
My sexuality is it can be awakened through just me dancing and me feeling myself, and it's more in the body, you know, and I think that that's the difference.
How can these images change the perception of the female body?
Portraying the feminine in an authentic way, I think, is the thing. It's like I do some shoots that I do are super emotional, and emotions are expressed through the photographs, or your belly is hanging loose, or there's so many different ways. That doesn't take away from it being a beautiful photograph. I do videography as well, and I do sometimes these emotional alchemy containers where I capture a lot of emotion, and I capture a woman moving through emotions. And that doesn't make it less beautiful. It's so beautiful. That's beautiful, yes. It's so beautiful witnessing a woman's emotions, because the feminine is all of it. We're the full spectrum. Where it's like in nature, we're the storms, we're the wind, we're the calm waters, we're all of it. So I think that is like, that's the beauty, and that's the real beauty of the feminine, accepting your full spectrum. And versus being like, okay, I'm only sexy or beautiful if I'm in this part. Like, no, like you have to get comfortable with like all of you, the grit, the dirt, the spit, the sweat, you know, all of it. Course. Because it's all part of your feminine. And when you own that, and when you own all of you and really embody that, that's an energy that like ripples, and that's an energy that like you can walk into any room with that confidence, and people will notice you, because it's one of the most powerful energies in the world, you know.
So you would say that after a shooting with you, like these girls feel more empowered, and they take that home with them?
The word empowered, I don't know, because to me that also implies that you don't have your power. You always have your power, you know. More embodied and more in their bodies, more in their feminine. Yes, I hope so. Like, I think so. I've had feedback that says that way. Like, some women have told me that they've gone through a big transformation within the shoot, that they feel different afterwards, and some women are crying in the shoots because they are breaking through layers, you know.
Oh, nice, that's beautiful.
And so, yeah, I think so, and I hope so, and I believe it's not just me and my medicine. It's more so if I step in front of a camera and I have someone take photos of me in that same way, like the medicine is the container itself, of course. You know? Yeah.
So now we're getting closer to the part that excites me the most.
Okay.
I want to talk about the divine feminine. Can you explain me what is the divine feminine for you?
The divine feminine is an energy. We all have it. You know, men and women, we all have a divine feminine, we have a divine masculine. It's the polarizing energies that exist within all of us. It's the yin and the yang. It's the, you know, it's the sun and the moon. It's everything, you know. The divine feminine energy, it's life force energy that exists within us, you know, and it's our feminine energy is more our creative side, more of the color, more of the nurturing, more of the creativity, more of the softness, the slowness, the flow, the listening to our rhythms, living with our cycles. Like the nature is feminine, you know, to some extent. It's also masculine. Masculine side is more the structure, the framework, the action, there's, you know, so there's the polarizing energies. Sexual energy, for me, like Kundalini energy, is like life force energy. To me, that's more feminine, you know? It also has a masculine counterpart, right?
Of course.
But the divine feminine, how to tune into your divine feminine more, I would say the playfulness, dancing, singing, expression, art is more...
I would say that's how you explain it to a non-spiritual person. That's how you would explain the divine feminine?
Yeah, I think that there's so many qualities that we have that are feminine energies that you don't know, but if there is more of like playfulness, art, expression, dancing, that's more of the feminine energy. The masculine energy is more like it's present, grounded, like, and so there's so many words that we can put into it, but it's more of like your softening and your allowing and your surrender and your receiving is more feminine, you know, versus the masculine being more of a penetrative energy, and the same as the sexual energy of like go, action, do. So,
but would you say that you connect also with your divine masculine?
Absolutely, we have both, and we need to balance both.
Okay.
A lot of us are running from very much of a masculine side because we've grown up in a patriarchal world,
exactly.
You know, where it's like you have to achieve, you have to be successful, you have to and there's like,
and especially that we are so conditioned to work in weeks and not in cycles.
Exactly, and expected to work sort of the same every day on a 24-hour cycle. That's how men work. As women, we work in a month cycle.
Exactly.
Men work on a 24-hour cycle.
Yeah.
So I think it's very much like, and like I said, it's not about leaving the masculine behind. There's wounded masculine energy and there's wounded feminine energy. The key is to balance your energies, you know, because there's wounded feminine energy too. There's like jealousy and feeling of unworthiness and feeling of all that, like a lot of that is the wounded feminine, you know, and the wounded masculine is more of like the ego, the greed, the anger, like all these things. And we have all of this, right? Of course. The key is to like, how do we balance both of these energies? And I think that we have grown up in a world where the masculine energy has been dominant for a long time and the feminine energy has been suppressed, and like your emotions, that's very much your feminine energy, your emotional landscape. And I think that men and women in this world need to lean more into our feminine, into our intuition as well. It's very feminine versus logic, you know? And so there's many ways we can go about this, and there's many more ways that we can compare these energies, but yeah, that's a little bit about.
And so how was your first contact with it? Like, was it something you connected with, or how did it started your divine feminine path?
I think it's been very much of a slow unfolding. I was raised mostly by women, like by my mom, my grandma, my sister. My dad was present in my life, but not physically. Like, I didn't grow up with him in my house. So I think I was brought up with very strong feminine energy, but I can see now that strong and feminine energy was very much also coming from a masculine place, from not having that masculine present. Then it was very much of like, I'm an independent woman, I can do it all by myself. When actually the leaning into the polarities of the masculine and the feminine is actually the feminine being able to receive help, being able to, you don't have to be hard, not feel your feelings and do it all by yourself. It's like, no, the feminine is actually soft and is actually more at a slow pace, not this go energy. Okay. So I think that it was sometime, you know, when I moved to Costa Rica, when I was very in touch with nature, I think that a lot just awakened me to that energy, awakened me to my own rhythms and how slow I wanted to go, and how, you know, listening to myself, listening to my intuition. And then it grew and just became stronger and stronger. Then through plant medicine, through ayahuasca, which is also a female energy, a female plant, that very much anchored it in for me and made me understand things that I already understood, but really gave it more of like a
precision.
Yeah, precision, and like, oh wow, like, okay, like the things that I've been already feeling, this is what I'm doing with my art. This is what I have to do is work with this energy of the feminine. Okay. There's no defining moment that I feel like this is it. This was my feminine awakening. It was slow and I think it was always there. I was always very like expressive. I was always very like, I was a dancer when I was younger. I'm a singer. That sort of part of me, of owning that part of me, was always there. But then like as time went by, like became stronger, and I started to realize the way that I had it unintegrated and I had it wrong. You know, I thought that like I was empowering myself and feminist, but from a very masculine place. You know? And so I think I'm still learning how to dance with those energies, and I think we always will.
Do you believe in magic? Like, and if you do, like, how would you interpret that magic?
I believe in magic. I think that magic is everywhere, and I think that magic is, there's subtle realms, you know, that we have the physical realm, and then we have the spiritual realm, and we have, you know, there's different ways we can tap into that, right? And there's also this, if you believe in law of attraction and like synchronicities and those kind of things, that to me is magic. You know?
For me too.
There's also ways that you can work with magic, and ways that in photo shoots, for example, like I told you, I call in the goddess in photo shoots. I call in an energy that's greater than me, and I think that magic is those moments when we notice those synchronicities. Magic is paying attention to the subtle and paying attention to like, oh, do you see how that happened? Like,
yeah,
you know, like,
I agree.
And like noticing those things and being how we commune with the plants and how we commune with the universe and things that are not only physical.
But how do you keep it going in your life? Like, how do you honor magic?
I think, first of all, presence. That is how we are able to like notice and see the magic in our lives. You have to be present. If you're stuck in your mind all the time, you're gonna miss the magic of your life. There might be magic opportunities and magic things presenting itself to you all the time, and you're missing it because you're not present. So I think a meditation practice is very important. I think that that is the first thing that'll get you open to even seeing those things, being in your body, listening to your intuition and those kind of things, because from that space is how we navigate to the magic, right? And rituals as well is something like, it's very subtle, but it works, you know? It's like if I'm sitting down and before my photo shoot and I call this energy in and I call like in and like whatever comes through this photo shoot will ripple and it will heal.
Which kind of goddesses do you connect?
It can be anything. It's whatever comes through. Like I believe we have to learn how to really listen, you know, and how to, instead of, I don't like to attach to be like, okay, I'm gonna work with this goddess because I chose her, you know. She'll come to you, you know. There's been in photo shoots where I've had like chills up and down my spine and heard goddesses' names in my head that I was like, where did this even come from? You know, it's nothing that I decided like this is what's gonna happen. It's more of connecting to the bigger energy of the collective feminine, of the divine feminine, and whatever wants to come through, I'm open. I'm here as a channel for it. Okay. And I'm here for any goddess that wants to work with me to come through, you know? And then the ways that goddesses show up in your life, it's like different archetypes or goddesses, or whether it's from Hinduism or whatever. It's like, I don't like to attach to these things. I prefer letting them come to me, because that's the magic to me. Like that's how you can truly be connected to something.
You mentioned in one of your posts that casual sex doesn't feel right for you anymore, and this was the quote you actually wrote. It says, "This temple is too sacred for energies to enter that aren't here to meet all of me. In it for the sacred union."
Yeah, so I think that getting in touch with the energy of my womb, realize what is her energy, when that's where we grow a child eventually, you know, a lot of mothering and nurturing energy, a lot of it very connected to my heart, and realizing like how I was not honoring that part of me when I was having casual sex, and how there's a difference when there is an encounter with a man. There's a difference of like him having sex with me because he wants to please himself and he wants to get off. It's a very goal-oriented sort of approach to sex. Or like, okay, we're both gonna get off, great, you know? Versus it being from a space of love and creation. And from a space of like, I want to meet you where you're at, and when we can play in ways where like, even when you tap into that energy, even just touch becomes electric, because you're playing with an energy of like union, of meeting each other, of reading each other's energy, of being sensitive to the other's energy, of the man being sensitive to how much time a woman needs, if she needs that much time, you know? And meeting her there, versus like how fast can I get her to get wet so that I can put my dick in?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And that's a very different energy that comes from like a goal-oriented sort of like, this is for me kind of energy versus like, this is for a union. This is for both of us to meet and for the sacred masculine and feminine to come together into that space of oneness.
Is it important? Is not important to feel pleasure also?
Yeah, I think, but I think that pleasure can be just playing with that energy alone. Pleasure can start by just breathing together. Pleasure can start with just like simple touch, like tuning into your body and not so much your head. And like we all have a lot of, from past sexual encounters or past sexual like imagery, a lot of that is connected to our heads when we move into a sexual experience. But like, how can you come into the presence and into the body and into just the sensation of touch, of play, of pleasure, and meeting yourself and meeting your partner in whatever feels pleasurable, and how subtle it can actually be, and how much pleasure you can actually feel that has nothing to even do with the genitals, that has nothing to even do with
that's
sex.
what I was coming to, exactly. Like
and
finding another pleasure that is not from arousal of genitals.
Exactly, and I think that that's also like a tantric approach to sex, of like those energies coming together versus like it being that goal-oriented, like patriarchal way of like, this is like, we're gonna go into sex and we're gonna get off, which I think is very problematic in like the porn industry and all of this, how sex is portrayed a lot in media and stuff, because a lot of young men and women grow up thinking that sex is like something that is so much more goal-oriented than actually just connection.
Yes.
And union.
I think the pleasure is there in the full connection of all of this.
For sure, and I think for women, like, there's so much pleasure and connection. Like, our emotional life is so tied to our sexual life. Like, a lot of women, they couldn't just have like physical sex. They need that. Because it's so connected to our heart. We need the emotional connection. And what I was saying in that quote was also like, I feel your energy inside of you naturally. My feminine nature and my feminine chemicals and hormones and oxytocin and all of that is going to start connecting to you in a way of like, you could potentially be the father of my child. In the past, when I was having more casual sexual experiences, I was denying that truth and I was denying that part of myself. And then when I started to get more honest with myself, I actually felt that like, no, actually, like, there is a part of me that gets attached because there's an energetic attachment there. Of course. There is a part of me that feels my heart because my womb is connected to my heart and I can't, so.
Yes, I agree. What are your thoughts on sexual liberation nowadays and the trend of some people to be promiscuous as a form of sex positive attitude?
What I was just talking about, like I was there. I was very promiscuous myself, and I felt that was very empowering for me, and I felt that was very like sex positive, and I truly feel like everyone can do whatever they want with their bodies. Everyone should follow what feels good for them, but what I ask and what I want is, and what I think all of us want is like, you need to truly be honest with yourself and check in with yourself, and like, if you're sleeping with a lot of people, because I have friends that they're polyamorous and they sleep with a lot of people and they're very connected to themselves and they have very just conscious conversations around it. The people that they connect with, they talk to them like, what are your needs? What are your desires?
Exactly.
What are
it's
your
not
fears?
just sexual, it's not casual sex.
Exactly. Like, well, how do you want aftercare after we have sex? Like, how would you like me to treat you after? How would you like, so bringing consciousness into it, I think, is very important, because you as a woman, if you are sleeping around and just like, and all the power to you, and go on your journey and do whatever feels good for you. But I do think that it's very important to check in with your heart, check in with your body, check in with your womb, check in with, like, get really radically honest with yourself of like, what is it that I desire? Like, what do I really desire? Do I desire love? Do I desire connection? Do I desire these things? And am I truly getting that in these casual encounters? Or can I do this in a more conscious way? Because we all love having sex and want to have a lot of sex, And
I think it's also called a responsabilidad afectiva, like this responsibility of the people you are like having sex with, like not just like them and leave them, like
no, totally.
You use them as a toy.
Exactly. And I think that, bringing love into it, even if you are having a relationship, a sexual relationship with someone that is somewhat casual. It's not someone that is your boyfriend, or it's not someone who is your husband, or you even want to be. But how can you still bring love into that and act from a space of love and act from a space of communicating with each other and bringing consciousness into it of like, okay, this is what we're doing, and this is not leaving desires unmet and not leaving needs unmet and not leaving your body feeling like off, but instead like bringing your emotional life into that, even if it's a casual experience. Of
course. You know? I feel also it's very important not to be like a frustration exit, you know, like
exactly, which for a lot of women and men, but a lot of men, it's like, you know, it's like, okay, like this is how I come, I ejaculate, and oof, like that's the stress leaving my body. And it's like, and I think that semen retention is very powerful. Like, how do I learn to actually circulate this energy, sexual energy within myself, and then pour that energy into my purpose and into my mission in the world, you know? And when you feel that they're in a space of just wanting to get off and wanting to release is a very different experience than someone actually wanting to connect with you.
Exactly.
So ask yourself, like, what do you feel like is happening here? Do I feel like this is just we're just scratching an itch for each other, which, like, sure, if you want to do that. But personally, in my own sex life, there has to be love involved.
Of course.
Love doesn't always have to mean that we're a couple, but like there has to be just love for the other, love and respect and honoring and worship of the other human being, you know?
Yes.
And I think that's how, just getting in tune with like how emotional sex actually is and can be, you know, and it's all related.
What is for you empowerment?
Empowerment is a very interesting term because I don't think you can empower anyone. Like, you have your power. I don't need to empower you. You need to discover that power within yourself and embody your power. Okay. So for me, it's more about embodiment. It's more about how can I embody this power that I hold, because I don't need to empower. I mean, we can step into more of our power, but that in a sense is embodying it.
I like embodiment a lot, but we don't have a name for that in Spanish. Like, I have tried looking, and
my friend was saying
we have something similar. The word embodiment, like just a translation of it doesn't exist. My friend,
my friend, I don't know if she made this word up or if it's just, but she says encuerpamiento.
But it's not we don't have like some kind of manifesto that says, because you can say encorporamiento, but that means a lot of other stuff, but not embodiment, you know?
I think also even the term embodiment is, what that actually means is growing and expanding and evolving into what it's meaning now than what maybe it meant 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or whatever, you know? I think that we also have the power to use words in a way of how they explain of what we're doing, because what we're doing and you know, we're having these conversations, and everything that I'm talking about, divine feminine, these are just words, but it's translating things that are very subtle, you know, and it's translating things that I'm trying to put words to, but really it's like, what is the real word for it? What do I really do, and how do I put it into words?
So we have arrived to the end of our meeting, and I want to thank you a lot for this interview. It was amazing. Like, it was so good to hear about the divine feminine, to open our perception. And it was very interesting also to know about the healing photography, because it's also something that it started to get known, you know, like, because it gets you into the consciousness. You know, it's super good that you were here and you could share with us. Such a pleasure to have you. And I would like if you could tell us like what's coming next. What are your projects? Like, what are you gonna do with this healing here in Mexico?
One of the things that I'm working with here in Mexico is with some friends, or they've become friends and artists. They have an artist collective called Piel Canela. Doing a video for it. The video is a lot about women's connection to the earth, women's connection to the plants, and essentially our inner medicine woman, you know, and our inner witch. I think that we as women, all of us, but women especially, that connection to the earth and that connection to our bodies and that connection to the universe and everything. And there's a lot of indigenous wisdom. There's a lot of, how do we tie that all together and understand that that is your divine feminine too, like the rewilding and working with plants and working with alternate ways of healing ourselves, or alternate ways. We can talk about the menstrual cycle and a lot of different things. So that's a little bit. Besides that, I just launched a photography coaching container where I'm gonna coach other photographers and help them on the path of doing this work. I think that more women need to do this work. I think it's beautiful work. I've witnessed so much transformation, and I've experienced myself so much transformation within this work and working with the feminine and sort of like these sort of healing containers within photography, and I think it's very powerful. And I don't really want to be the one and only person, and I don't think I am the one and only person who does that, but I do believe that there's so much medicine that I've experienced within this work that I want that experience for other people too, or other people who are, or even just women who are curious about doing women's photography. What I'm being called to do more of is the videography containers that I'm doing. I call it emotional alchemy. I create poetry videos but I at the same time hold a space for whatever it is you're going through. I had a woman that was working through her rage very much, or another woman that was working through a breakup, and capturing those emotions and then making it into like a poetry video. And then I do my normal photo shoots that I normally do as well, which I'm available for. Instagram I think is easiest, Paula Simons Photography. I also have a website, Paula Simons Photography also.
Okay. Hope you like this episode. You can like, comment and share, and see you next week.